Holy. All right, so bell ringer for today. Detail why the temperance movement was created. Explain how this movement pushed for the U.S. government to pass the 18th Amendment, aka we all know as prohibition. There we go. Oh. Hopefully this is the screen I'll share. It should be. Bless you. Eddie, what? What your problem, man? Where you heading? Do you think you grab me a tissue box?
Oh my goodness, I'll get you.
All right, thank you. Well, I was going to be the mean guy and put up current events today, but since it's Wednesday already, we'll just wait for next week. Does that sound all right? I got to see who's up, actually. What's up? You went last week. We weren't here. Yeah, I know what you mean. Kayla, do you go yet?
No.
Okay. Well, I need one from Matt, Chloe, Griffin, Barbara, Sarah, Kaylee, Tanner, Kale, Cassidy. All right. How about Matt and Sarah? Does that work? And we'll just work back this row and that'll be it. Not for this Friday, but next Friday. Sound good? All right. That'd be kind of mean. It's already Wednesday. Well, if you want to, you can. How about that? How was that video lesson yesterday? That worked. Yeah? You're pulling my leg here, are you? Okay. Okay. Good. All right, let's get to it here. So the two groups that we talked about on Monday, who were they? What are the names of those groups and what were their beliefs? What were their thoughts on the matters in 1920s as the United States is changing. We're going through an industrial stage, right? We're going through an industrial revolution, and more people are moving to urban areas for job opportunities. But what did this cause? Cause somewhat of a divide, right? Cassidy, what were the two groups that we mentioned? Yeah, good job. The fundamentalists and the modernists. Good job. So make sure you guys remember that. It's going to be something important, especially for this the 1920s time period. All right, this is a drastic change. Things are forms of entertainment, obviously drinking alcohol, leisure time activities. The lifestyle in America is changing drastically. All right, good. So fundamentalists, what were their beliefs? What were their thoughts? Gabe, go ahead. Yeah, good job. Good job. That the fundamentalists, they believed strictly on the Bible. Whatever the Bible said was true. And principles, teachings, understanding, okay, these core values would be instilled into these families, these households. And the fundamentalists, where do they reside mostly? In rural areas or urban areas? The fundamentalists. Are they living in the rural areas or the urban areas, the development? What do you think? Gail, the fundamentalists? They're stuck in traditional lifestyle. Where are they living at? Rural areas? Yeah, the countryside. Good job. Good job. So they don't want to see this change, right? They see a lot of the leisure time activities, the forms of entertainment, the bar scenes emerging, and they were not about it. And the real reason for it is because of the production, the sale, the consumption of alcohol. Right? Alcohol is being infused in many of these forms of entertainment. Right? Let's face it. You go to a ball game, a baseball game. I know you guys can't do it, but your parents, what do? First thing they grab is maybe a hot dog or, let's say, a beer. Right? And that's being infused into American culture to a point where many people that were fundamentalists are really holding on to those religious background, that religious beliefs. They were not accepted of this, right? Because this challenged a lot of their beliefs, their upbringings, okay? And they thought that this was a reason for much abuse in the household and broken families, right? So the fundamentalists weren't about this new modern change in society, right? They didn't like the new emergence of entertainment and alcohol being really a cultural, I guess, say, commodity of the United States. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. What was the other group? What was the other group? Eddie? So we have the fundamentalists and who else? Modernists. Yep. Good job. And who are they? What do they believe?
They believe in like the new way that it is. Break from the past and like search for new forms of expression.
Okay. All right. Good job. Good job. So they're more accepting of science and theories and kind of putting the religious principles and teachings to the side. Right? They're looking to advance. And many of these modernists live in urban areas. And they're partaking in these new leisure activities, these new forms of entertainment, and getting involved with drinking alcohol as somewhat of a pastime. And this was a huge clash, like I said, because this is the first time we see industrialization taking hold in the United States in the early 1900s, moving up to the 1920s. And as the United States is exiting out of World War One, as World War One's coming to a close and we're returning home, this return to normalcy really wasn't all that normal, okay? And a lot of that has to do with industrialization. A lot of that has to do with many people moving to these urban areas for job opportunities. And they're partaking in many leisure activities that were given to them in these new modern establishments, these new industrial cities, okay? A lot of that's going out dancing, going out drinking, and maybe not conforming to these old traditional values, these fundamentalist values. So again, causing a huge shift. So the temperance movement, why was it created? Why was the temperance movement created? So video talk, this wasn't something new. This happened all throughout the 1800s. It was shortly stopped during the Civil War, just because obviously we're getting into conflict and fighting amongst each other. But why was this temperance movement created? Who was the driving force behind it as well? Kara, what do you got? The temperance movement. Yeah, good job. Good job. So, with the temperance movement, this was mostly formed by Women's Christian Temperance Movement League. So, women were trying the driving, kind of the driving force behind this movement, just because they thought that this caused a lot of the issues internally in the United States. That alcohol affected many families and caused a lot of abuse, broken families. And let's face it, the wages that these men were earning in these industries, in the coal mines, they weren't coming home and spending it on the family. They weren't coming home and providing for the family. They were going to the saloons, right? They were going to the bars and trying to cope with some of the stress in the workplace. And obviously, this is not something that should be kind of continuing on in the US. So many fundamentalists, many people, women especially, form these unions, form these leagues, these social groups to fight against the emergence of alcohol in their culture and making sure that it doesn't continue on to be somewhat of a form of culture in the United States. Okay, so the temperance movement was a way to try to ban alcohol because this is what was causing a lot of internal problems and a lot of abuse in the household, and obviously challenging religion, right? Challenging their religious values. All right, so the 18th Amendment, prohibition. Okay, we'll talk about the Volstead Act and how that was enacted all across the country once the 18th Amendment was accepted. And this was banning alcohol, the sale and production of alcohol. Okay, obviously, you get caught drinking. I mean, obviously, that's something that they really can't fine you for or throw you in jail for. But the sale, production of it, that was illegal at this time. And that just goes to show where the country was. Okay, so looking at it in the 1920s, when the prohibition was enacted right after World War One, okay, many of these politicians were still focused and deeply rooted in the fundamentalist values, these religious core values. They're not really accepting of the new modern industrial, the new modernist viewpoints. And you got to think too, a lot of these soldiers coming home, right? As they're coming home, they're facing PTSD. They're facing a lot of the issues that they witnessed in World War One. And as they're joining into the workforce and seeing these harsh conditions not changing, low wages, and unsafe conditions in the workplace, well, they're going to go out and drink, right? And that's kind of what also pushed this temperance movement to occur. All right. Is there any questions on the temperance movement? Sorry I wasn't here yesterday, but the video kind of described a lot of that and that division with wets and dries, the fundamentalists, modernists, right? So you got to think the dries really comparable to the fundamentalists and the wets, obviously the modernists. They want to see the alcohol still being consumed, being sold and produced in these large urban areas. What's up, Cassidy? Yeah, the fundamentalists. Yeah, yeah. Wait, are you saying for the prohibition? Yeah, yeah. So that was the only acceptance of alcohol at that time. Was really in church for, I guess you say those ceremonies. I guess you say somewhat of an offering, right? And even in doctor's office for medical excuses. So at that time, they didn't really have pain medicine and any type of pain relievant. So they thought, well, alcohol can be used and prescribed to people to help ail some of these problems, these sicknesses, these diseases. So yeah, I mean, in church and for medical excuses, that was the only way alcohol was allowed to be sold and manufactured in the United States. So everybody was kind of going around, oh, I got a bum knee. Oh, I was joking. Just joking. Kind of compare it to marijuana today in a way, right? How that's being more accepted in some states, especially out west, and for medical usage. All right, terms for today. I have a lot of them. I want to apologize, but there's a lot to this chapter. And we're getting into prohibition. I wanted to give you some of these yesterday, but the video I had didn't have these terms. So it is what it is. We'll get through them. So the 18th Amendment, the Volstead Act, prohibition, they all go together. That was something yesterday was mentioned in the video, along with the Women's Christian Temperance Movement. And today's terms, speakeasies, bootleggers, Al Capone, the Untouchables, and the 21st Amendment. So there you go. There you go. Give you some time to write those down. we'll go over it.
Oh, you have to find out who you're sleeping.
Use my mask.
Mhm.
Yeah, go ahead. All right, okay. So if there's a couple terms that you're maybe missing, you guys can refer to the video then copy some of these down. but I need to get moving here. So we're going to talk about speakeasies today, bootleggers, Al Capone, and organized crime. All right, so speakeasies and bootleggers. So Americans did not believe drinking was a sin. Obviously, in these modernist, these urban areas, they wanted to go out and to dive into the form of these entertainment. And a lot of that had to revolve around drinking. So speakeasies were these hidden bars that were all throughout many of these urban areas in these cities, because with the 18th Amendment, the sale, production of alcohol was illegal. So still, many people profited off of selling and providing alcohol to the American people by having these speakeasies, which are hidden bars that were throughout the cities and many urban areas. And in some cases, yeah, you could say in maybe smaller urban areas as well. But for the most part, these speakeasies, you had to have like a hidden code to get in the door. So it might be a different knock, it might be a code name, whatever have you. And some bars around the area, there's one actually down in Harrisburg, which is pretty neat. I think it's called the Speakeasy. Actually, you walk in, it kind of looks like an old hair salon, and you give a code name, and they'll let you in. Obviously, if you don't have it right. And the one wall opens up, and it's a huge bar. And it's pretty cool. It's like kind of showing homage to what happened back in the 1920s through Prohibition, and giving some of the speakeasies like some sort of it's just kind of a cool bar scene anyway. So speakeasies were a place where people could go and let their hair down in a way. And again, you need a hidden code to get in because it was illegal at the time to provide alcohol to the people. So with these speakeasies, not only did American citizens go, but politicians, even police officers. It kind of just goes to show that many people did not really appreciate or like the 18th Amendment. They're going to cross those lines, cross those boundaries, no matter what, because again, it wasn't much of a favorable amendment of the law because people still wanted to drink, right, and still clashing against that fundamentalist value with the wets and the dries there, right. So bootleggers were people that transported alcohol over large distances. And they might have got it from the Canadian border, right? They might have got it from imports from other countries, or maybe there were some other beer manufacturing that were still producing it and had to be transported large distances to these speakeasies or to the people that could purchase it. And we'll talk about organized crime today with Al Capone. So these bootleggers, they got the name because in some cases these people would hide alcohol underneath their pants leg in their boot line, and they would carry it far distances underneath their dress, underneath their wardrobe. For large quantities of alcohol, they would hide it in different trucks, right? So there's actually many pictures that you can find, and there's one of like a brick truck where they have these bricks stacked up in the back of a truck, and then you just kind of move the bricks out of the way, and there's a ton of alcohol underneath. And some examples too with many of these crates. So they have crates, and it might say, oh, this is different sort of supplies, like let's say lampshades. And as you throw the lampshades out, you crush the bottom of the box, you can find the liquor, the alcohol underneath. But this is just a way of transporting and smuggling alcohol to these speakeasies. And today, like obviously you can maybe compare it to harder drugs like cocaine or heroin or methamphetamine, you name it. It's still going on today, but just with harder drugs. But organized crime, the rise of mafia is kind of formed during this time period because Prohibition, many people wanted to drink alcohol and they didn't think it was against the law or that they were sinning when consuming alcohol. So many people profited, like Al Capone. So with organized crime, Al Capone made a killing because he provided the people with what they really wanted, which was alcohol, which was booze, and providing to these speakeasies. And with Al Capone, he made a killing, literally, millions and millions of dollars. He was one of the most famous men of the time period. He was actually best friends with Babe Ruth, which was kind of interesting. There's many pictures of them sitting together at certain areas and even in the ballpark. A lot of it because Babe Ruth, every time they played Chicago, well, he got a drink. Let's just face it. That's what happened. With Al Capone, a little bit about his backstory. He was actually kicked out of public school. He went to public school in Brooklyn, and the reason for it because he slocked his teacher in the face. So don't get any ideas back here, all right? Yeah. So Al Capone moved to Chicago at a very young age, and he picked up kind of on the sale and the production of alcohol, the bootlegging of alcohol. And like I mentioned, he made millions and millions of dollars because this was something that people wanted. They thought the 18th Amendment was dumb, was stupid, and they didn't think it was really breaking the law of really just consuming alcohol. And like I said, he made a large sum of money. The way they brought him down was because of income tax, right? Well, he was going out and eating at these fancy places. He lived in these large luxury mansions. He had multiple homes all across the country. It's like, well, how is he providing for all this, right? How does he have this type of money and this type of luxuries? Well, they looked back into his bookies and figured out, obviously, he was avoiding many of the tax exemptions, and he was obviously making a lot of the money that wasn't taxable income. So it's like, well, it's easy to catch him that way, right? They never could really crack down and find exactly how he was selling and distributing the alcohol. There's many FBI agents like the Untouchables that were trying to break him and take him down, but it was very hard and difficult to do because he did such a good job. And a lot of it is because he was paying off politicians. He was paying off police officers. And many of these politicians and police officers were the ones going into the speakeasies and drinking the alcohol. So they weren't going to try to bring him down, right? What's up, Cassidy? Oh, yeah. So again, it was very difficult to take this guy down just because he had so many connections and everybody loved him. The reason for it was because he was providing with what the people really wanted, alcohol. And like I said, the Untouchables was this FBI group, okay? In the 1920s, 1930s, this was the FBI agents that took him down, a team of members that the only way they could really catch him was through tax evasion. And obviously, with the rise of mafias, this caused a lot of crime throughout the cities, okay? And this caused many different mafias, gangs, and groups to go against each other because of maybe connections to certain speakeasies and selling and distributing alcohol to one another, or disrupting the flow of alcohol to these speakeasies. And if you're losing money, obviously it's going to cause some issues. So one of the most famous mass murders, okay, and takedowns of these two gangs and mafias in Chicago was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And this happened in the 1920s, where Al Capone and his group of men, he wasn't along with it, but his group of men, they disguised themselves as police officers and broke into the opposing mafia and took down and literally massacred, executed the group of members in the opposing mafia. And it just goes to show how far these mafias would go, these gangs and this gang violence. And this was really the rise of it in the 1920s. Obviously, in the 1960s, picking up with different harder drugs. And still today, there's gangs and mafia still around. But 1920s, it was all about alcohol. So Al Capone, he would be later taken to jail because of income tax evasion, right? And he really couldn't document where this flow of money was coming from. Everybody knew it was coming from alcohol. But how do you try to attach him to the crime? Well, income tax is how they did it. So he was placed in jail for a short period of time, and he actually had syphilis, which he later lost his mind and a connection to his mind. And this caused a lot of problems for him, a lot of other ailments, which he later died right around 1945, right, 1947 in Alcatraz. Okay. And do you guys ever see the movie Capone? Tom Hardy plays him. It's pretty good, actually. And that describes a little bit some of his ailments and some of the problems he faced through his time in jail and towards the end of his life, facing syphilis and really losing connection to his mind. And it was pretty sad. What's up?
So we should watch that tomorrow.
I used to show the movie The Untouchables. That was a pretty good movie. Right, Ms. O'Neill? Sean Connery. Yeah. Oh, who else is in it?
Wow, that might be as good as well.
Yeah, I think it's better,
Except
actually.
that beginning.
I think it's better. But I don't know if we'll get to watch it because we got to keep moving on here.
Oh, come on.
Oh, I know. But eventually, even after a lot of the organized crime with Al Capone and a lot of the violence all throughout many major cities like Chicago, Eventually, prohibition would come to an end. And a lot of that had to do just because many of these areas like Chicago, New York, and the government had to fund many of these federal agents. And it was very difficult to do that. Right. And let's face it, a lot of these police officers, these politicians, they didn't really care about the law itself either. So they weren't going to follow it. They were going to the speakeasies and drinking up a lot of the times too. And they're paid off by many of the mafias so that they can continue their organized crime and making money off of the sale and distribution of alcohol. So just because of really the funding to these police officers, these federal officers that try to crack down on the 18th Amendment, eventually this would be taken away in the 1930s. And a lot of that had to do just really because of, what do you think? The Great Depression, right? The Great Depression. They thought maybe the sale of alcohol will help revenue and spur some economic activity. Really didn't do too much, but anyway, the 18th Amendment was repealed, and the 21st Amendment was repealing the 18th Amendment. All right, so eventually, in 1933, like I said, prohibition will come to an end. But there was a long stretch from 1920 all the way up into 1933 where the sale, manufacturing, production of alcohol was illegal. It was illegal. And I can only imagine coming home from World War I and that happening, right? The banning sale of alcohol. It's like, oh, what the heck? Come on now, we risked our lives overseas and we can't even have a drink. All right, is there any questions, guys, on organized crime, prohibition, speakeasies, bootleggers, Al Capone? Yeah? All right. So I have an assignment here for you. It's just a political cartoon. Since we're running low on time, you guys can kind of work on this on your own. But it's a political cartoon activity. It just describes organized crime and really how hard it was to take it down. And it was almost an impossible task. Yep, here it is down here, organized crime, political cartoon. And this is kind of what the picture looks like, political cartoon. It's hard to really read it, but it says organized crime. This huge night, and he has money all around him, bootlegged profits, paying off politicians, paying off police officers. And here's the law. Do you think that's really going to affect the organized crime? No, not at all. But there you go. That's what I'd like you guys to work on and have done for tomorrow. And we'll go over a little bit more in detail tomorrow. All right, there you go. Should have published for you.